Worthless waitress, serve quicker. Even this coffee can't stand your slow hands. The uniformed officer didn't wait. His palm cracked across her face, snapping her head sideways as the mug shattered at her feet. Scalding coffee soaked her apron, and the diner went dead silent. He rose slowly, boots grinding broken porcelain into the tile. 2 fingers clamped under her chin, lifting her face like defective merchandise. "You exist to carry plates, not think," he muttered, breath thick with authority and contempt, shoving her back hard enough to steal her breath. She steadied herself, eyes drifting to the rain-streaked window where a broad silhouette had just stopped. He had no idea the woman he'd just struck was married to a Navy SEAL who had seen everything. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The Sunday morning sun streamed through Rose Diner's windows, casting long shadows across the checkered floor. Imani Graves moved with practiced grace between the packed tables, her arms laden with plates of steaming eggs and crispy hash browns. The after-church crowd's chatter filled the air, along with the clink of silverware and the hiss of the grill from the kitchen. "Heads up," Mavis Rowe muttered as she passed Imani at the service station. "The uniform table's already giving Sarah trouble. They're all yours now." Her face was pinched with worry. "Just be careful with them today." Imani's stomach tightened as she glanced toward the corner booth. Officer Rylan Voss sat sprawled against the vinyl seat, his uniform shirt stretched across his chest, 2 deputies flanking him like bodyguards. Their coffee cups were already empty. Taking a steadying breath, Imani approached their table. "Good morning, officers. Can I get you some more coffee?" Voss's pale eyes locked onto her, his mouth curling into what might have looked like a smile if it wasn't so cold. He snapped his fingers sharply, the sound cutting through the diner's buzz. "Well, look who finally noticed us. Thought we'd have to send up a flare." Heat crept up Imani's neck, but she kept her voice professional. "I apologize for the wait. We're a little backed up with the church crowd." "Speak up," Voss interrupted, cupping his hand behind his ear. "Can't hear you when you mumble like that." The deputies smirked. Imani raised her voice slightly, feeling dozens of eyes on her. "I said we're backed up with the church crowd, sir. Would you like to start with some more coffee?" "Let me hear you say that one more time," Voss said, leaning forward. "Real slow now, so we can all understand." At a nearby booth, Deacon Lewis Price looked up from his newspaper, his weathered face creased with concern. Other regulars shifted uncomfortably in their seats, suddenly very interested in their plates. "We're backed up with the church crowd," Imani repeated, each word careful and distinct. Her hands gripped the coffee pot tighter. "Would you like—" "Now was that so hard?" Voss cut in. He pushed his cup toward the edge of the table. "Coffee, and make it fresh. None of that burnt stuff you're carrying." Imani turned to get a fresh pot, but Voss's arm shot out, blocking her path. His elbow knocked against his half-full water glass. It tipped, sending ice water across the table and onto the floor. "Now look what you made me do," he said, voice dripping with mock concern. Several customers turned to stare. "Better clean that up, right? Wouldn't want anyone to slip." The deputies chuckled. Imani's chest felt tight as she set down the coffee pot and reached for her serving towel. She could feel Voss watching her as she knelt to mop up the water, her cheeks burning. "Missed a spot," one of the deputies pointed out, deliberately dropping his napkin onto the wet floor. "Thank you for letting me know," Imani said quietly, picking up the napkin. Her knees ached against the hard tile. When she stood, Voss was examining the menu with exaggerated focus. "Think I'm ready to order now, unless that's too much trouble?" "No trouble at all," Imani said, forcing her voice to stay steady despite her trembling hands. She pulled out her order pad. "The special," Voss said. "Eggs over easy. Hash browns extra crispy. Bacon extra crispy. Toast extra crispy." He paused, eyes glinting. "You getting all this down? Should I go slower?" "I have it, sir. Eggs over easy, hash browns, bacon, and toast. all extra crispy. And I want those eggs perfect, he added. Not too runny, not too hard. Think you can handle that? From his booth, Deacon Price set down his newspaper with deliberate care. The morning sun caught his silver hair as he watched the scene unfold, his jaw tight. Imani nodded, writing the last details. Yes, sir. I'll put this right in. Read it back to me, Voss commanded. Every word. Nice and clear. The diner had grown oddly quiet. Even the kitchen sounds seemed muted. Imani could hear her own heartbeat as she recited the order, word by word, while Voss nodded along like a teacher grading a slow student. Well, would you look at that, he drawled when she finished. She can follow instructions after all. Imani turned toward the kitchen, but Voss stood suddenly, his bulk blocking her path to the counter. He towered over her, close enough that she could smell coffee and cigarettes on his breath. The other customers looked away, forks scraping plates with forced concentration. The tension in the diner stretched like a rubber band pulled too tight. Imani stood perfectly still, order pad clutched to her chest, as Voss loomed over her. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She could step back, but that would mean retreating. She could try to move around him, but the aisle was narrow. Voss didn't move, just stood there with that same cold smile, enjoying the power of making her wait, making her choose. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Imani tried to edge past Officer Voss toward the counter. His arm shot out, blocking her path like a barrier gate. The metal napkin dispenser rattled as his elbow hit the counter. Going somewhere? Voss's voice carried across the diner. We're not done here. Imani's order pad crinkled in her grip. I need to put in your order, sir. Sir? Voss's lips curled. Now, you remember your manners? Bit late for that, isn't it? The kitchen door swung open and closed. Tyler Finch, the teenage busboy, emerged with a bin of dirty dishes. He hesitated, then slowly set the bin down, his hand slipping beneath his apron. I've been nothing but polite, Imani said, keeping her voice steady. Her grandmother's words echoed in her head. Don't let them see you shake. You call this service polite? Voss gestured at their table. Empty cups? Attitude? Making us wait while you chat up other customers? His voice rose with each accusation. That's disrespect. I haven't disrespected anyone. Imani's words came out quiet, but clear. If you'll excuse me. The slap cracked through the air like a gunshot. Imani's head snapped sideways, her cheek exploding with pain. Silverware clattered onto plates. Someone gasped. A child started crying. The force nearly knocked her off balance, but Imani caught herself against the counter. The taste of copper filled her mouth where her teeth had cut the inside of her cheek. Her vision swam, then steadied. Behind the register, Mavis Rowe stood frozen, her face pale as she glanced between Imani and Voss. Her hands gripped a stack of menus so tight the laminated edges bent. The gears were turning behind her eyes, calculating lost customers, bad publicity, insurance rates. Tyler's phone peeked out from under his apron, its camera lens catching Voss's reddened face and the deputy's reactions. His young hands trembled slightly, but he kept filming. Now that, Voss said, leaning in close to Imani's face, is what happens when you don't show proper respect to an officer. His breath was hot against her stinging cheek. Keep acting up, and we'll see how you like a disorderly conduct charge. Bet that would make finding another job real interesting. In his booth, Deacon Lewis Price pushed back his chair with a screech. His tall frame straightened, dignity wrapped around him like armor. But before he could take 2 steps, a deputy moved to intercept him, casually adjusting his gun belt. The message was clear. Stay put. Imani's ears rang. Her cheek throbbed in time with her heartbeat, but she didn't cry. She wouldn't give him that satisfaction. Instead, she swallowed the blood in her mouth and straightened her spine. Her grandmother hadn't raised her to break. Nothing to say. Voss smirked. That's better. Maybe you're learning after all. He pulled out his wallet and peeled off several bills, holding them up like he was teaching a lesson. Here's for the coffee we never got. Keep the change. You clearly need the help. He dropped the money. The bills scattered across the counter, some floating to the floor like dead leaves. The deputies stood, adjusting their belts with exaggerated casualness. Voss turned toward the door, then paused. Oh, and sweetheart? His voice dripped false concern. You might want to put some ice on that. Looks like it's starting to swell. The bell above the door chimed as the officers left. Their patrol cars started up outside, gravel crunching under tires. The diner remained suspended in silence, like a theater after the villain's exit, before the audience remembers to breathe. Imani gripped the counter's edge, her knuckles white. She could feel her pulse pounding in her cheek. The fluorescent lights seemed too bright, the coffee smell too strong. Her section of tables stared at their plates, suddenly fascinated by half-eaten eggs and cooling toast. Tyler's sneakers squeaked against the linoleum as he hurried over to Deacon Price's booth. The old man's face was carved from stone, his eyes fixed on Imani with a mixture of rage and sorrow. Tyler pulled out his phone, hands still shaking slightly. I got it, he whispered, angling the screen so the deacon could see. All of it. His face, what he said, everything. On the small screen, Voss's expression twisted with cruel satisfaction as his hand struck Imani's face. The sound was clear, unmistakable. The timestamp blinked in the corner. Proof, preserved in pixels. The morning sun continued to stream through the windows, painting bright rectangles on the floor. Coffee burbled in the machines. Bacon sizzled on the grill. The ordinary sounds of the diner continued, obscenely normal against what had just happened. Imani touched her cheek gently, wincing at the heat beneath her fingers. She could already feel it swelling, knew it would bruise. But she kept standing, kept breathing. The counter was solid under her hands, anchoring her to the moment. She had work to do, orders to deliver, tables to clear. A single tear escaped, tracking down her undamaged cheek. She wiped it away quickly, leaving no trace. Her grandmother's voice whispered again, Stand tall, baby. Don't let them see you break. The back hallway of Rose Diner smelled like dish soap and old mop water. Tyler's hand shook as he held out his phone, its screen reflecting off Imani's tear-streaked face. Deacon Price stood guard at the end of the hall, his tall frame blocking curious customers from seeing their huddle by the supply closet. I started recording as soon as he got up, Tyler whispered, his voice cracking. Got everything, the slap, the threats, how the deputies just watched. He swiped through the video, showing the clear shot of Voss's face twisted in anger. Imani touched her swollen cheek, wincing. The skin felt hot and tight, pulsing with each heartbeat. Thank you, Tyler. That was brave of you. Wasn't brave, Tyler mumbled, looking at his scuffed sneakers. Just couldn't watch him. Couldn't let him. His words trailed off. Deacon Price's deep voice rumbled from his post. It was plenty brave, son. Standing up to bullies with badges takes courage. Mavis Rowe hurried down the hallway, her sensible shoes squeaking on the linoleum. Her face was pinched with worry, but she held up a finger in triumph. The security cameras caught everything, too. Clear as day. That animal striking you, threatening you. We've got him from 3 angles. For a moment, relief flooded Imani's chest. Evidence. Proof. She wasn't alone with just her word against a badge. Deacon pulled out his phone, fingers moving deliberately over the keypad. I'm calling Marcus Thompson. He's a good attorney, handles civil rights cases. We need to document everything while it's fresh. He paused, looking at Tyler. Son, send that video to at least 3 different places right now. Email, cloud storage, whatever you use. Tyler nodded, fingers flying over his phone screen. Already sent it to my Google Drive and my sister's email. The lunch crowd's chatter filtered down the hallway, mixing with the clatter of plates and the hiss of the soda machine. Normal sounds that felt wrong against the knot of fear in Imani's stomach. Heavy boots echoed from the front of the diner. A deputy, different from before, walked past the lunch counter, heading straight for their group. Mavis straightened her apron, plastering on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Afternoon," the deputy drawled, thumbs hooked in his belt. "Just need to ask a few questions about the incident earlier." His eyes locked onto Tyler, who seemed to shrink under the stare. "Starting with why you were recording a police officer without permission." Tyler's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. His phone disappeared into his pocket like it was burning him. "Tyler was doing his job," Deacon said firmly. "Bussing tables, same as always." The deputy's gaze didn't waver from Tyler. "That right, boy? Just doing your job?" The word boy came out like something rotten. Imani stepped forward, putting herself between Tyler and the deputy. Her cheek throbbed with each word. "We all saw what happened. Officer Voss assaulted me without provocation. Ma'am, if you'd like to file a complaint, you'll need to come down to the station." The deputy's smile was cold. "Of course, we'll need to take statements about your behavior too. Disorderly conduct, resisting." "I have forms in my office," Mavis cut in quickly. "For incident reports, official complaints go through proper channels," the deputy interrupted. He finally looked at Imani. "Unless you'd rather let this whole thing slide. Misunderstandings happen, after all." Imani's hands shook as she grabbed a stack of napkins from a nearby service station. She pulled a pen from her apron and started writing, pressing so hard the paper nearly tore. "I'll write my statement right here." The deputy watched her for a moment, then shrugged. "Suit yourself. But remember," his hand brushed his holster, "false statements to law enforcement are a serious offense." Mavis wrung her hands, glancing between Imani and the deputy. "Maybe we should all take a breath here. Think about what's best for everyone, for the diner. We can't afford—" "Can't afford what, Mavis?" Imani's voice was quiet, but steel-edged. "Can't afford to tell the truth?" "That's not what I meant," Mavis protested weakly. "Just, these things can get complicated." "There's nothing complicated about assault," Deacon said. His calm tone carried authority earned from decades of community leadership. "Imani, let me drive you home. You need to ice that cheek and rest." The deputy's radio crackled. He keyed it without taking his eyes off their group. "Unit 3, copy." To Imani, he added, "We'll be in touch." They watched him leave, his boots echoing all the way to the front door. The lunch rush had thinned to a few lingering customers, their conversations suspiciously muted. "I'll get my things," Imani said, carefully folding her handwritten statement and tucking it into her pocket. Her uniform felt too tight, the diner's air too thick. Tyler grabbed his backpack from behind the counter. "My shift's over anyway. I should go—" "Wait," Deacon said, looking through the front windows. "Let me check outside first." Through the glass, they could see a patrol car idling across the street, its tinted windows reflecting the afternoon sun. The message was clear. "We're watching." Imani's legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stand straight. "Tyler, is there another exit you can use?" The boy nodded, clutching his backpack like armor. "Through the kitchen. Back alley. Go," she whispered. "And Tyler, thank you." He gave her a quick, terrified smile before disappearing into the kitchen. Deacon held the front door open for Imani, his presence solid and reassuring. The patrol car's engine rumbled louder as they stepped into the parking lot. Early evening light slanted through the kitchen window, casting long shadows across Imani's small table. She pressed the ice pack harder against her cheek, watching condensation drip onto her untouched cup of tea. Deacon Price's deep voice filled the modest kitchen as he paced, phone pressed to his ear. "Mavis, we need that footage now, before anything else happens." He paused, frowning. "What do you mean, corrupted?" Imani's stomach clenched. She could hear Mavis's anxious voice through the speaker, high-pitched and stammering. "I don't understand," Mavis was saying. "The system was working fine this morning, but now it's just static. The whole day's recording is gone." Deacon's weathered face darkened. "Gone? Or deleted?" "I called the security company," Mavis replied. "They said it might be a power surge, or maybe the hard drive failed, but—" Her voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Imani. I should have downloaded it right away. The ice pack dripped onto Imani's uniform, still stained with coffee from Voss's accident. She hadn't found the energy to change yet. Deacon's phone buzzed with another call. Hold on, Mavis. Tyler's calling. He switched lines, putting it on speaker. Tyler, you get home okay? The teenager's voice came through shaky and breathless. They stopped me, Deacon. 2 blocks from the diner. Said it was a random check, but... He swallowed audibly. They took my phone, went through everything. When I got it back, the video was gone. All my backups, too. Even my cloud storage. Imani closed her eyes, feeling the bruise throb beneath the ice. Of course they'd moved fast. Of course they'd known exactly what to do. But listen, Tyler continued, dropping his voice to barely a whisper. Before I left the diner, I sent a copy to a draft email. Never sent it, just saved it. They didn't find that one. I can forward it to you now. Deacon's shoulders relaxed slightly. Smart boy. Do it right now, while you can. Multiple addresses. Already done. Tyler's voice shook. They followed me home, Deacon. The patrol car's still out there. Stay inside, Deacon instructed. Don't answer the door without checking first. We'll figure this out. After hanging up, Deacon pulled a small notebook from his jacket pocket. Imani, we need to write down everything. Times, exact words, who was where. Every detail matters now. Imani nodded, pushing the ice pack aside. Her hands trembled as she described the morning rush, the entitled demands, the deliberate provocations. Each memory felt sharp enough to cut. He's done this before, she admitted quietly. Not the slap, but the rest. Little things, making me repeat orders until I sound respectful enough. Leaving 1-penny tips with notes about my attitude. I never reported it because... She trailed off. Because you knew what would happen, Deacon finished. He'd seen this pattern before, written in the tired faces of too many community members. A heavy knock at the front door made them both jump. Through the window, they could see Deputy Laird's cruiser parked in the street, its presence like a threat. Don't open it, Deacon said, but Imani was already standing. If I don't, they'll say I was uncooperative. She straightened her uniform, lifted her chin, and opened the door. Deputy Laird filled the door frame, one hand resting casually on his holster. Evening, Miss Graves. Just delivering a friendly warning about filing false complaints. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Wouldn't want things to get harder than they need to be. Are you threatening me, Deputy? Imani's voice came out steadier than she felt. Threatening? No, ma'am. Just explaining how things work here. He glanced past her to Deacon. Evening, Deacon. Awful lot of trouble brewing over a simple misunderstanding, isn't it? The only misunderstanding, Deacon replied evenly, is thinking we'll stay quiet about assault and intimidation. Laird's false smile hardened. Careful now. Interfering with police business, making false accusations, those things can follow a person, affect their job prospects, their housing situations. He locked eyes with Imani. Their family's safety. Something snapped inside Imani's chest. Fear crystallized into rage, cold and sharp. Are we done here, Deputy? For now. He tipped his hat with exaggerated politeness. You have yourself a blessed evening. They watched through the window as his cruiser pulled away, its taillights bleeding red in the gathering dusk. Imani's hands were shaking again, but not from fear this time. I won't let them win, she said quietly. I won't let them make me small. Deacon squeezed her shoulder. You're not alone in this fight. The sun had fully set when they heard keys in the lock. Caleb Graves stepped in, still in his security company uniform from his overnight shift. He stopped dead when he saw Imani's face. The bruise had darkened to purple, spreading across her cheekbone like a storm cloud. For a long moment, Caleb didn't move. His stillness wasn't the frozen shock of civilians. It was the absolute control of someone trained to manage crisis. From the beginning, he said finally, pulling out a chair. His voice was soft, but carried the weight of precision-guided missiles. Every detail. He took out a small notebook, identical to the one Deacon had used earlier. Imani touched her husband's wrist. His pulse was steady under her fingers, betraying none of the fury she knew burned beneath his calm exterior. "It started during the Sunday rush," she began. The porch light cast a harsh circle in the deepening dark as Caleb methodically walked the perimeter of their modest home. His footsteps were silent on the grass, each movement precise and purposeful. Inside, Imani watched through the window, her bruised cheek throbbing in time with the humming bulb overhead. "He's checking sightlines," Deacon explained softly from his seat at the kitchen table. "Angles of approach, vulnerable points." Imani nodded, remembering how Caleb had listened to her story with that same controlled focus, asking specific questions about positions, exact words, who stood where. He hadn't erupted in rage or sworn revenge. Instead, he'd started planning. The back door opened and closed with barely a sound. Caleb returned carrying a small security camera, one of several he kept from his private consulting work. "We'll start here," he said, setting it up in a corner with a view of both approaches to the house. "I'll add more tomorrow." "I've got 6 people willing to testify about what they saw," Deacon offered. "Good people, steady ones who won't back down easy." Caleb nodded. "We'll need them. But first, we need to protect them." He turned to Imani, his voice gentle but firm. "This isn't just about the slap anymore. They're moving like a unit, coordinated. That means orders from above." "Sheriff Brinley," Imani said quietly. She'd seen how the other officers deferred to Voss, how quickly the intimidation had started. "He's protected. For now." Caleb checked his phone, then stepped onto the back porch. Through the screen door, they could hear only his side of the conversation. "Jonah. Yeah, it's happening again. Same patterns. Right. No, we've got proof, but they're moving fast. Yeah, I understand. How soon?" The call was brief, but when Caleb returned, his expression had shifted subtly. To most people, he would have looked the same, calm, controlled. But Imani saw the tightness around his eyes. "That was Jonah Mercer," he explained. "We served together, but now he works federal investigations. They've had their eye on Brinley's department for months. Missing complaints, seized cash that never made it to evidence, systematic intimidation of witnesses." He looked at Deacon. "Your people who saw the slap. They need to document everything now, before pressure starts. And they need to be ready for retaliation." "Already on it," Deacon assured him. "I've got them writing statements, making copies, storing them separate places." Imani's phone buzzed. A text from Mavis. "So sorry, but need to reduce shifts temporarily. Business reasons. Hope you understand." She showed it to Caleb, who read it without surprise. "They'll try to break your credibility next," he said. "Make you look unstable, unreliable. They'll dig through your past, pressure your references, maybe plant something to discredit you." "Let them try," Imani replied, steel in her voice. "I've got nothing to hide." Headlights swept across the walls as a patrol car crept past their house, moving slower than a funeral procession. The beam lingered on their windows before continuing down the street. Caleb watched through a gap in the curtains. "They're establishing presence, letting us know we're being watched." He turned to Deacon. "Can you stay at Sarah Mitchell's place tonight? It's 2 streets over. Good sight lines, trusted neighbor." Deacon nodded. "Already arranged. And I've got people taking shifts watching Tyler's house, too. Boys scared, but standing firm." "Good. Tomorrow we start countermeasures." Caleb pulled out his notebook again. "Imani, I need you to write down every interaction you've had with Voss. Times, dates, witnesses if any. Even small things, comments, gestures, any pattern of harassment." Imani began writing, her hand steady now. "There was the time he followed me to my car after closing, and the night he kept driving past the diner during my late shift. Document it all," Caleb confirmed. "We build the pattern, prove the intent." He started sketching a rough map of their neighborhood. "From now on, we vary routes, check for tails, keep records of every officer interaction. No one goes anywhere alone." Another patrol car rolled past, this one even slower, They're trying to wear us down, Deacon observed. Make us feel watched, isolated. It won't work, Imani said firmly, though her hand trembled slightly as she wrote. I won't let them make me afraid in my own home. Caleb moved to the window, checking angles again. Fear's not the enemy, he said quietly. Fear keeps you alert, makes you careful, but it can't control you. He turned back to them. We use their tactics against them. Every time they watch us, we document it. Every threat becomes evidence. Every attempt to intimidate proves the pattern. Deacon's phone buzzed, a message from Tyler. They're still parked outside his house, he reported. Boy's scared but smart. Says he's recording every patrol car that passes. Good instincts, Caleb nodded. We'll need... He stopped as another set of headlights swept the house. This time, the cruiser pulled into their driveway, spotlight blazing through their front windows. Imani stood, but Caleb touched her arm gently. Let them sit there, he said. They're trying to provoke a reaction. Don't give them one. After 5 long minutes, the cruiser backed out and drove away. Caleb moved to the front door, checking the locks. He turned to Imani, his face set with quiet determination. Tomorrow, he said, we move like they're hunting. The morning sun hadn't yet cleared the horizon when Imani pushed open the heavy glass door of Rose's Diner. The bell's familiar chime felt different today, hollow, like a warning. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed against the lingering darkness, casting harsh shadows across empty tables. She headed straight for the schedule board, her steps faltering when she saw the blank space where her name should have been. The week's shifts, neatly written in Mavis's precise handwriting, showed a glaring gap. Every slot she normally worked now filled with other names. Mavis bustled from the kitchen, arms full of fresh napkins, but stopped short when she saw Imani. The older woman's eyes skittered away, fixing on anything else. The coffee maker, the counter, the floor tiles that needed mopping. Mavis? Imani kept her voice steady, though her heart hammered. My name's not on the board. I meant to call you, Mavis said, still not meeting her gaze. She arranged and rearranged the napkins, creating neat stacks that didn't need stacking. It's just, business has been slow, and with budget concerns. The lie hung between them, made obvious by the cluster of regular breakfast customers already filling booths. The uniform table, always reserved for law enforcement, sat empty but waiting. Water glasses filled, coffee cups turned up. Slow? Imani echoed, glancing pointedly at the half-full diner. On Monday morning? Before Mavis could respond, the bell chimed again. Officer Rylan Voss swaggered in, followed by 2 deputies. His smirk widened when he spotted Imani, like a cat discovering an injured bird. Well, look who's here, he drawled, loud enough to draw attention. Learn anything about respect since yesterday, girl? Imani's fingers curled into fists, but she kept them at her sides. She thought of Caleb's words. Let them show who they are. She stood perfectly still as Voss and his companions claimed their usual table. Coffee's empty, Voss called out, rattling his cup. Guess some people still don't understand good service. Mavis hurried over with a fresh pot, but Voss waved her away. No, let her do it. He pointed at Imani. She needs the practice, right? Every eye in the diner watched as Imani took the pot from Mavis's trembling hands. She poured carefully, professionally, while Voss leaned back in his chair like a king on a throne. More, he commanded after one sip. Not hot enough. She refilled it. Still not right, he said, pushing the cup toward her again. This continued. Pour, sip, dismiss, repeat, until the pot was nearly empty. Each time, Voss found a new complaint. Too hot, too cold, too full, not full enough. His deputies snickered, exchanging knowing looks. The door chimed again. Deacon Lewis Price entered, his presence drawing some of the attention away from Imani. He nodded to her, then settled into a booth near 2 older men, regulars who'd been present for Sunday's incident. Excuse me, gentlemen, she heard him say quietly. About what happened yesterday. Don't remember much, one man muttered, suddenly fascinated by his eggs. The other wouldn't even look up. Wasn't really paying attention. Through the front windows, Imani glimpsed Tyler Finch approaching for his morning shift. Before he reached the door, a patrol car pulled up beside him. 2 officers got out, blocking his path. Minutes later, Deacon's phone buzzed. He answered quietly, but Imani caught fragments. "Yes, Mrs. Finch. I understand. No, don't let him go alone. I'll be right there." Across the street, partially hidden by a delivery truck, Caleb's dark blue pickup remained stationed. She knew he was documenting everything: photographs, timestamps, plate numbers, shift patterns, building evidence methodically, the way he'd been trained. Voss stood suddenly, bumping into Imani as she passed with a fresh coffee pot. Hot liquid splashed across her arm and uniform. She bit back a gasp of pain. "Clumsy," Voss said loudly, making sure everyone heard. Then he leaned close, his breath hot against her ear, voice dropping to a whisper. "No one will believe you." The coffee burned against her skin, but Imani didn't flinch. She felt the weight of stares, some sympathetic, most careful to look away. The diner had grown unnaturally quiet, every scrape of fork against plate echoing like an accusation. In the silence, coffee dripped steadily onto the floor. Mavis hovered nearby with a towel but didn't approach. The deputies at Voss's table continued eating as if nothing had happened. Through the window, Imani could see Tyler being searched against the patrol car, his mother watching helplessly from the sidewalk. The morning sun had finally cleared the horizon, streaming through the diner's wide windows. It should have brought warmth, but Imani felt cold despite the coffee soaking her sleeve. She thought of all the mornings she'd spent in this diner, years of serving, smiling, building relationships with customers who now couldn't meet her eyes. Voss returned to his seat, radiating satisfaction. His coffee cup sat empty again, a silent demand for another refill. The burns on her arm throbbed, but Imani's hands remained steady. She could feel the weight of the coffee pot, still half full. Every drop a reminder of what they thought she was worth. The afternoon sun had retreated behind a wall of gathering clouds, casting long shadows across Rose Diner's parking lot. Imani's feet ached from hours of standing, despite having fewer shifts. She fumbled with her car keys, the metal cool against her fingers, while exhaustion settled deep in her bones. The lot was half empty now, just a scatter of regular customers' vehicles and a few patrol cars parked at odd angles. Wind rustled through nearby trees, carrying the first hint of evening chill. The diner's neon sign hadn't been switched on yet, leaving the lot in that strange twilight dimness where everything looked slightly unreal. Imani heard the footsteps before she saw them, 3 distinct patterns of heavy boots on asphalt spreading out behind her. Her hand tightened on her keys as she remembered Caleb's instructions. Be aware of triangulation. If they surround you, they're not there to talk. "Hey there, trouble." Officer Voss's voice carried across the lot, deliberately casual but threaded with menace. He approached from her left, while his deputies fanned out to her right and rear, forming a loose triangle with her car as the fourth wall. Imani turned slowly, keeping all 3 men in view. Voss wore his trademark smirk, but his eyes were hard. "Heard you've been filing some interesting paperwork," he said, making up stories about police misconduct. "I haven't filed anything yet," Imani replied, her voice steadier than she felt. She took a half-step toward her car door, but one of the deputies shifted to block her path. "Smart girl like you should know when to let things go," Voss continued, moving closer. His badge caught what little light remained, flashing like a warning. "This town runs smooth when people know their place, but you're causing trouble, making good officers look bad, stirring up complaints." "I'm just telling the truth," Imani said. She tried to step around him, keys raised toward her lock, but Voss's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. His fingers dug in hard enough to make her gasp. "The truth?" Voss sneered, twisting slightly. "The truth is whatever gets written in the official report. And right now, I'm seeing a hostile subject resisting." Let her go. The voice came from behind a parked truck. Calm, measured, deadly serious. Caleb stepped into view, his movements fluid and controlled. He wore simple work clothes, jeans and a dark shirt, but his stance spoke of years of training. "This is police business," Voss snapped, but his grip on Imani's wrist tightened. "Back off." Caleb continued his approach, hands open and visible at his sides. "You're hurting my wife," he said, voice still perfectly level. "Remove your hand." The deputies shifted uncertainly, hands drifting toward their weapons. Voss's face darkened with rage, and something else. The sudden realization that he might have miscalculated. "Or what?" Voss challenged, pulling Imani slightly closer. "You gonna assault an officer? That's a federal." He never finished the sentence. Voss released Imani to swing at Caleb, telegraphing his punch with all the subtlety of a man used to having power, not earning it. The move was meant to provoke, give him an excuse to claim assault on an officer. Instead, Caleb moved like water. He redirected Voss's punch past his shoulder, caught the extended arm, and used the officer's own momentum to spin him face first against Imani's car. The whole sequence took less than 2 seconds. No strikes, no obvious force, just precise, efficient control that left Voss pinned and helpless. The deputies reached for their handcuffs, but a new voice rang out across the lot. "Everything's being recorded." Deacon Lewis Price stood near the diner's side door, phone held high and steady. "Live stream," he added clearly, "to multiple accounts." Voss jerked free of Caleb's hold, his face flushed with humiliation and fury. His uniform was rumpled where he'd been pressed against the car, his carefully maintained image of authority shattered in front of his subordinates. "You just made this worse," Voss snarled, straightening his shirt with shaking hands. "Much worse." One of the deputies pulled out a notepad, ostentatiously writing down Caleb's name and description. The other kept his hand near his weapon, but his eyes darted uncertainly between Voss and the phone, still recording everything. The parking lot had grown darker, the clouds above now heavy with the promise of rain. The diner's windows glowed softly, and through them, faces could be seen watching, witnesses to another kind of power shift in their small town. Imani stood straight, rubbing her wrist where Voss's fingers had left red marks. She felt Caleb's presence beside her, solid and reassuring without being possessive. Deacon remained by the door, his phone steady, documenting everything. The 3 officers backed away slowly, maintaining what dignity they could. Voss's face was a mask of barely contained rage as he pointed at Caleb. "We'll be having a conversation real soon," he promised through clenched teeth. The deputies scribbled one last note, then followed their superior toward their patrol cars. The sound of engines starting cut through the evening quiet, followed by the crunch of tires on asphalt as they pulled away. The bell above Rose Diner's door jingled one last time as Mavis Rowe turned the sign to closed. Outside, the parking lot had emptied except for a few strategic vehicles parked far apart: Deacon Price's sedan, Caleb's truck, and an unmarked car belonging to Sadie Klein from the local paper. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed over empty booths. The coffee maker gurgled its final cycle, and the kitchen's fans whirred down to silence. Imani sat in the furthest corner booth, her fingers tracing condensation rings on the Formica tabletop. Caleb stood nearby, positioned to watch both entrances while appearing casual. Sadie Klein looked younger than her 36 years in faded jeans and an oversized sweater, but her eyes were sharp as she slid into the booth across from Imani. She placed her phone face up on the table, voice recorder app ready. "Start from Sunday," Sadie said quietly, glancing at Imani's cheek where makeup couldn't quite hide the lingering mark. "Every detail." Deacon settled into the adjacent booth, close enough to contribute, but giving them space. "Tell it like you're painting a picture," he encouraged Imani. "Help her see it." Imani's voice stayed steady as she described the crowded diner, Voss's escalating harassment, the sudden shock of the slap. It wasn't just the pain, she explained. It was him knowing he could do it in front of everyone. Sadie's pen moved quickly across her notepad. And no one intervened? They were scared, Deacon added from his seat. But they saw it. Every bite of pancake stopped mid-air. You could hear that slap over coffee cups and conversation. The diner's back door creaked open, and Tyler Finch entered with his mother, Jennifer. The teenager's usual energy was subdued, but determination showed in his jaw. He carried his phone like it held precious cargo. "Show her," Caleb said softly. Tyler pulled up a hidden folder, nested inside 3 others with random names. "Mr. Graves showed me how to make backups they wouldn't find," he explained, his voice carrying a hint of pride. "Even when they wiped my phone, this stayed safe." The video played on Tyler's screen. Voss's face clear, his voice unmistakable, the slap echoing through tinny speakers. Jennifer Finch watched with her hand over her mouth, seeing the full incident for the first time. "They tried to erase it," Tyler continued, "but Mr. Graves said to always have copies of copies." Sadie leaned forward, reporter's instincts firing. "How many incidents like this? How long has—" The back door opened again, cutting her off. A woman in her late 40s slipped in, nervous energy radiating from her movements. Nora Haskins, former police dispatcher, looked like she hadn't slept in days. "I can't stay long," Nora said, sliding into the booth next to Sadie. Her hands shook as she placed a thin manila folder on the table. "But these need to be seen." Inside were handwritten notes, dates, times, complaint numbers that led nowhere. "Every time someone tried to report Voss," Nora explained, "Sheriff Brinley had us misfile them. Some disappeared completely." Sadie flipped through the pages, her professional demeanor cracking. "This is systematic." "How long?" "Years," Nora whispered. But nobody could prove it. "Until now." Caleb moved closer, his voice low and precise. "We have everything backed up. Triple copies with timestamps, witness statements stored with our attorney, video evidence secured off-site. Nothing disappears this time." From the kitchen, a pan clattered. They turned to see Mavis Rowe standing in the doorway, face pale. "You can't do this," Mavis pleaded. "They'll shut us down. The diner's all I have. People depend on their jobs here." Imani stood, straight-backed and resolute. "And what happens to the next person Voss decides to hurt? The next teenager he terrorizes? We can't keep swallowing pain to make others comfortable. The diner's reputation—" "Will survive telling the truth," Deacon interjected firmly. "Or it doesn't deserve to survive at all." Sadie's fingers flew across her phone screen, composing a message to her editor. "I have a slam-dunk story." The satisfaction of breaking something this significant made her smile, until her phone lit up with an incoming call. The screen displayed "Sheriff" in stark letters. The booth fell silent. Jennifer Finch pulled Tyler closer. Nora's hands trembled as she gathered her notes. Even the diner's usual creaks and settling sounds seemed to hold their breath. Sadie stared at the phone as it continued to ring, the decision point hanging in the air like summer lightning about to strike. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across worried faces. Outside, a car passed slowly by the darkened windows. Inside, the weight of consequences pressed against them all. Careers, safety, lives carefully built over years. Imani reached across the table and covered Sadie's phone with her hand, blocking the insistent caller ID. Their eyes met in silent communication. Some calls didn't need to be answered. Some stories needed to be told, no matter who tried to silence them. The phone rang one final time, then fell silent. But they all knew it was just the beginning. Tuesday dawned with unusual warmth for the season. Imani Graves opened her eyes to sunlight streaming through the bedroom window, her hand automatically reaching for her phone. A text from Sadie Klein lit up the screen. "Story scheduled. Working on final edits." For the first time in days, Imani's shoulders relaxed as she got ready for the day. In the kitchen, Caleb was already up, monitoring their newly installed security cameras through his laptop while sipping coffee. "Quiet night," he reported, pulling out a chair for her. Deacon called, meeting set for 9 at First Baptist. The church hall smelled of old wood and fresh coffee when they arrived. Deacon Lewis Price had arranged metal folding chairs in a tight circle, creating an intimate space despite the high ceiling and echoing walls. Early morning light filtered through stained glass, casting colored shadows across worried faces. Mrs. Jenkins, who'd taught third grade for 40 years, spoke first. Her weathered hands twisted a tissue, as she described watching her grandson get stopped 3 times in 1 week. They said it was routine, but there's nothing routine about making a 16-year-old boy lie, face down on hot pavement. More stories followed, each one breaking through years of enforced silence. Mr. Thompson, the retired postal worker, detailed how his complaint about aggressive officers disappeared from the station records. Sarah Martinez, who cleaned the courthouse at night, whispered about overheard conversations between Voss and Sheriff Brinley, discussions about which reports to lose. Caleb stood near the wall, observing while Deacon guided the conversation. During a break, he pulled Imani aside to an empty Sunday school room. "Time for some practical things," he said, positioning her near the door. "When someone tries to crowd you, this is your power stance." He demonstrated, feet shoulder-width apart, weight balanced. "It looks casual, but gives you stability. Makes your voice steadier, too." Imani mirrored his position, feeling the subtle difference in her core strength. "Now, scanning," Caleb continued. "Don't just look, observe. Note uniforms, weapons, hands. Where are the exits? Who's watching whom? Make it automatic, like breathing." They practiced until Imani could rattle off details about a room without seeming to look around. "It's not about fighting," Caleb explained. "It's about control. Knowledge is safety." Tyler Finch arrived later, clutching a manila envelope. His mother waited in their car, engine running, scanning the street. The teenager's hands shook as he handed over his timeline. Dates, times, incidents he'd witnessed while working at the diner. "I wrote everything down," Tyler said, voice barely above a whisper. "Even the stuff before Sunday. How Officer Voss would come in just to mess with people. How he'd follow certain customers home." Deacon squeezed the boy's shoulder. "You're doing the right thing, son." Around 11, Imani's phone buzzed with a message from Mavis Rowe. "Your regular shifts are back, starting tomorrow if you want them." The message felt like surrender, or maybe redemption. When Imani and Caleb stopped at the grocery store, people met their eyes instead of turning away. "Mrs." Peterson from the bank even touched Imani's arm and whispered, "We're with you, dear." Hope bloomed like spring flowers through cracks in concrete. Imani allowed herself to imagine justice, real consequences, not just hollow promises. Then, just after lunch, Sadie called. "They killed it!" The reporter's voice cracked over the phone. "My editor..." There was pressure. From advertisers, from the mayor's office. "They're calling it unsubstantiated allegations." Imani's hand tightened on the phone. "But we have proof. Video, witnesses, documents. They don't care." Sadie's frustration bled through. "The publisher got 3 calls this morning. One from Sheriff Brinley, one from Judge Marshall, one from the mayor himself. They're saying it could destabilize community trust in law enforcement." The hope that had carried Imani through the morning crumbled like sand. She relayed the news to Caleb, who immediately started making calls to his federal contact. As evening settled over their neighborhood, shadows grew longer and darker. Imani watched through their front window as a tow truck cruised past for the 3rd time, its headlights sweeping their house like searchlights. The driver's face was hidden in shadow, but his slow pace carried clear meaning. "We can take things from you." Caleb checked his watch. "We need to move. Deacon's waiting with those backup files." They got into Caleb's truck, both scanning the street before moving. The neighborhood felt different now. Every parked car a potential threat. Every shadow possibly hiding hostile eyes. They made it 3 blocks before red and blue lights flashed in their rearview mirror. A patrol car materialized behind them, announcing its presence with a short siren burst. Caleb checked his mirrors, noting the patrol car's number and the silhouette of its driver. His hand stayed steady on the wheel as the lights continued to pulse, turning the inside of their truck into a disco of law enforcement warning. The patrol car's lights painted everything in harsh flashes of red and blue. Caleb kept his hands visible on the steering wheel, exactly where Officer Rylan Voss could see them. Years of training kicked in. Stay calm, control breathing, assess threats. Don't say anything, Caleb whispered to Imani. No matter what happens. Voss approached with aggressive speed, his boots crunching gravel. His hand hovered near his holstered weapon, a deliberate intimidation tactic. The flashlight beam stabbed through their window, deliberately catching Imani's eyes before settling on Caleb. "License and registration," Voss barked. "You were swerving back there." "We both know I wasn't," Caleb replied evenly, maintaining eye contact through the mirror as he reached slowly for his documents. "Step out of the vehicle." Voss's voice carried that dangerous edge of authority unchecked. "Now." The night air felt thick with tension as Caleb carefully opened his door. "I do not consent to any searches," he stated clearly, knowing dash cameras might be recording. "I was driving safely and within the limit." "Hands on the hood." Voss jerked his thumb toward the truck's front end. "Spread your legs." From inside the truck, Imani watched helplessly as Voss conducted a pat-down that was more assault than search, pushing, shoving, trying to provoke a reaction. Caleb remained stone still, repeating, "I do not consent," with each new violation. 2 more patrol cars arrived, boxing them in. Deputies emerged with flashlights, circling the truck like sharks scenting blood. "Well, well," Voss announced theatrically, making a show of examining Caleb's military ID. "A tough guy seal, huh? Think that makes you special?" "I do not consent to any searches," Caleb repeated, voice steady despite Voss's attempts to goad him. "Search the vehicle," Voss ordered his deputies. They descended on the truck, forcing Imani out into the cold. She stood shivering as they tore through their belongings, scattering contents and breaking things with deliberate carelessness. "Look what we have here." Voss's voice dripped with false surprise as he held up a small plastic bag he'd discovered near the spare tire. White powder caught the flashlight beam. "Seems our military heroes got a habit." "That's not ours," Imani started to protest, but Caleb caught her eye and gave a tiny shake of his head. They both knew this was a setup. "Hands behind your back," Voss ordered, producing handcuffs with theatrical flourish. "You're under arrest for possession." Caleb allowed himself to be cuffed, his face betraying nothing as Voss tightened the metal deliberately past comfort. "I do not consent," he stated again, clearly. "That evidence was planted." "Add resisting arrest," Voss smirked at his body cam. "Subject is combative." They forced Caleb into the back of a patrol car, while deputies continued ransacking the truck. Imani stood in the road, arms wrapped around herself, watching helplessly as her husband disappeared behind tinted windows. "Better get yourself home," Voss taunted. "Unless you want to join him?" Deacon Lewis Price arrived within minutes of Imani's panicked call, finding her trembling in the ransacked truck. "We're going to the station," he said firmly. "Right now." The sheriff's department lobby was harshly lit and empty, except for a bored-looking dispatcher. Sheriff Hal Brinley emerged from his office like he'd been waiting for them, his practiced smile never reaching his eyes. "Ms. Graves," he drawled. "Making more trouble, I see." "Where's my husband?" Imani demanded. "Mr. Graves is being processed for a serious drug offense." Brinley's tone was patronizing. "Given your increasingly unstable behavior, I'd suggest you go home before you face charges yourself." "That evidence was planted," Deacon interrupted. "We all know what's happening here." "Careful, Deacon." Brinley's smile hardened. "Interfering with an investigation is a crime. So is making false accusations against officers." From down a side hallway, Nora Haskins watched the confrontation with wide eyes. When Deacon stepped away to make a call, she hurried over to him. "They do this all the time," she whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "Plant evidence, lose complaints, doctor body cam footage. The whole system's rigged." We need proof, Deacon replied quietly. They're too careful. Nora's voice shook. Everything goes through proper channels, but evidence disappears, timestamps change, witnesses recant. It's like fighting shadows. Imani finally had to leave without seeing Caleb. The drive home felt endless, each familiar street now seeming hostile and foreign. She tried accessing their security cameras from her phone, but the account was locked. Password changed, access denied. Inside their house, everything felt wrong. The spaces Caleb should occupy were empty. His coffee mug from that morning sat half full on the counter. His laptop hummed on the kitchen table, screen dark and locked. Imani slid down against the front door, wrapping her arms around her knees. Caleb, she whispered into the darkness. Her voice broke on his name. Headlights swept across the window, slow and predatory. The beam lingered, searching, before moving on, leaving her alone in the dark with the knowledge that they were watching, waiting, ready to take even more. The sunrise crept across Imani's kitchen floor like spilled honey, but she barely noticed. She hadn't slept, spending the night jumping at every car sound, every creak of the house settling. Her phone sat silent. No word from Caleb, no updates on his condition, nothing but the weight of uncertainty. A gentle knock at the door made her flinch. Through the peephole, she saw Deacon Lewis Price holding 2 paper cups from Mason's coffee shop, his weathered face lined with concern. "Brought you something strong," he said when she opened the door. "Figure you could use it." Imani's hands shook slightly as she accepted the cup. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her normally neat appearance showed signs of a sleepless night. "They won't let me talk to him, Deacon. Won't tell me anything except he's being processed." Deacon settled at her kitchen table, his presence somehow making the empty house feel less hostile. "Caleb's smarter than they think," he said, pulling out his phone. "He knew something like this might happen." "What do you mean?" "Yesterday morning, before all this went down, Caleb came to see me. Said he needed a witness." Deacon's voice was steady, reassuring. "He sealed a package with attorney James Morton. You know, the one who handled my sister's estate. Said if anything happened to him, we should retrieve it immediately." Hope flickered in Imani's chest for the first time since watching Caleb being driven away. "What's in it?" "Let's find out." Deacon checked his watch. "Morton's office opens in 20 minutes. The drive downtown felt endless. Early morning traffic crawled past the courthouse, past the sheriff's department where Caleb was being held. Imani kept her eyes straight ahead, refusing to look at the building that had swallowed her husband. Attorney Morton's office occupied the second floor of an old brick building. The secretary recognized Deacon immediately and ushered them into a conference room where a sealed manila envelope waited. "Caleb was very specific," Morton explained, handing it to Imani. "This was to be released only to you in person, witnessed by Deacon Price, if Caleb was arrested or disappeared." Imani's fingers trembled as she broke the seal. Inside, she found several USB drives, a thick stack of printed photos, and a handwritten letter in Caleb's precise handwriting. "My love," she read aloud, her voice catching. "If you're reading this, they've made their move. Everything here is backed up in 3 places. The photos show patrol patterns, documented harassment, license plates of unmarked cars watching our house. The videos include Tyler's original footage and every interaction since. Most importantly, call this number immediately and ask for Jonah Mercer. Tell him Protocol Echo is active. He'll understand." Deacon was already dialing before she finished reading. He put the phone on speaker as it rang. "Mercer." The voice was clipped, professional. "This is Deacon Price with Imani Graves. Caleb said to tell you, Protocol Echo is active." A pause. "Location secure?" "Yes," Deacon confirmed. "Listen carefully," Mercer said. "We've been building a case against Brinley's department for 18 months. Corruption, evidence tampering, civil rights violations, but they're careful. They destroy proof, intimidate witnesses, make problems disappear. Caleb's been helping document patterns, feeding us information. His arrest was predictable. They're trying to discredit him before he can testify. Can you help him? Imani asked, gripping the edge of the conference table. We're moving carefully. One wrong step and evidence disappears forever. Keep everything Caleb gathered absolutely safe. Document every interaction, every threat, every coincidence. We'll make our move when we have enough to make it stick. Her phone buzzed with a text. Mavis Rowe's name flashed on the screen. Need to talk. Landlord got pressure from some important people. Says he might not renew the diner's lease. I'm sorry, Imani. Anger rose in her chest, hot and clarifying. They were trying to erase her. Her job, her husband, her voice. The bruise on her cheek throbbed with remembered humiliation. I won't hide, she said suddenly, looking at Deacon. They want me quiet, invisible. But I'm done being polite about pain. Deacon nodded slowly. What are you thinking? The diner. It's where everything started. Where people saw what Voss did, then pretended not to see. But they can't ignore a crowd. We need witnesses, Deacon. People with phones, with voices, with courage. Community pressure, Deacon mused. Make it too public for them to control. Exactly. They operate in shadows, counting on silence. So let's fill every booth, every counter seat. Record everything. Show people they're not alone in speaking up. It's risky, Mercer's voice crackled through the speaker. But visibility can be protection. Just be extremely careful. Document everything. They spent the next hour reviewing Caleb's evidence. Photos showed patrol cars lingering outside their house at odd hours. Time-stamped logs detailed every interaction, every threat, every coincidence that wasn't coincidence at all. Caleb had built a wall of proof, brick by careful brick. Back home, Imani stood in her bathroom, staring at her reflection. The bruise on her cheek had faded to ugly yellow-green, but she could still feel Voss's hand, still hear the collective gasp of witnesses who'd chosen silence. She touched the mark gently, remembering every small humiliation she'd swallowed over the years. Every time she'd looked away, stayed quiet, tried to make herself smaller to avoid attention. Not this time, she said to her reflection, voice firm and clear in the morning light. The county jail's metal doors clanged open at 2:47 p.m. Caleb Graves emerged into the harsh afternoon sunlight, his movements precise and measured. His eyes swept the parking lot in practiced patterns, left corner, right corner, roof lines, vehicles, potential cover spots. Everything the Navy had drilled into him was automatic now, especially with stakes this high. Imani stood by Deacon Price's car, her breath catching when she saw him. She'd feared they might keep him longer, find another excuse, plant more evidence. But there he was, steady, controlled, and watching everything. They met halfway across the lot. No running, no dramatic embrace, just Caleb's forehead touching hers, sharing a single quiet breath. His hand found the bruise on her cheek. Featherlight. I'm okay, she whispered. I know. His voice was low, certain. You're stronger than they counted on. Deacon cleared his throat softly. We should move. Too exposed here. They drove to Mason's coffee shop, taking a corner booth away from windows. The afternoon crowd was thin, just a few regulars absorbed in laptops. Jonah Mercer arrived 5 minutes later, dressed like any other office worker on a coffee break. State investigators are ready, Mercer said quietly, stirring his untouched coffee. But we need something clean. Multiple angles, clear abuse of power, undeniable evidence. One more documented incident ties everything together. The community dinner, Imani said. Thursday nights at Rose are usually quiet, but we can fill it. Deacon knows people who'll come, who'll bring phones. Caleb nodded slowly. Good sightlines in the diner. Multiple exits. Civilian safety is manageable if we control the space. Voss works Thursday nights, Mercer added. He'll show up, especially if he hears about a crowd. His ego won't let him stay away. The bell above the coffee shop door chimed. Nora Haskins entered, looking nervous but determined. She slid into their booth, placing a thick manila envelope on the table. "Call logs," she said softly. "Every complaint filed against Voss in the last 3 years. The ones that disappeared are highlighted. Dates, times, incident details, all of it. I kept copies when I started noticing the pattern." "This helps," Mercer said, carefully securing the envelope. "But we need current footage, something immediate that forces action." Tyler Finch appeared next, having slipped in through the back door as planned. The teenager's usual nervous energy was focused now, almost professional. "I've got 3 cloud accounts set up," he reported. "The second anything happens, videos upload automatically to separate servers. They can't erase all of them." "Good work," Caleb said. The boy straightened slightly at the praise. Mavis Rowe was the last to join them, her face tight with worry. She'd aged years in the past few days, watching her comfortable world crack open. "The dinner crowd will hurt business," she fretted. "If things go wrong." "Things have been wrong," Imani said firmly. "We just pretended not to see it. How many times have you watched Voss harass people in your diner? How many times have we all looked away?" Mavis's shoulders slumped. "Too many. You're right. Use the diner. Fill every seat." They spent the next hour planning details. Caleb sketched the diner's layout, marking primary and secondary exits, optimal camera angles, and safe zones for civilians. Deacon listed community leaders who'd attend, people whose words carried weight, whose presence demanded respect. "We'll need a signal," Mercer said. "Something subtle to alert everyone when it starts." "Coffee pot breaking," Mavis suggested. "Glass shattering gets attention, but it's normal enough in a diner." Tyler practiced with his phone, testing angles and lighting. Nora memorized which officers would be on shift, their usual patterns. Every piece had to align perfectly. The afternoon sun slanted lower as they finalized positions. Caleb and Imani returned home to prepare, gathering equipment that would make documentation undeniable. In their bedroom, he helped her attach a small body cam to her apron strap, testing the angle. "Remember," he said, adjusting the miniature lens, "staying calm is your weapon. When they get loud, get quieter. When they try to provoke you, give them nothing but professional courtesy. Let them dig their own hole." Imani touched the camera gently. "Like you taught me. Control what I can control." "Exactly." He checked the power indicator. "Your voice, your movements, your dignity. Those are yours, not theirs." She watched him work. This man who fought with precision instead of rage, who planned instead of reacted. Every motion was purposeful, each detail considered. The camera was perfectly positioned, invisible unless you knew where to look. "What if they notice it?" she asked. "They won't. People like Voss see what they expect to see. A waitress they can push around, a woman they can frighten. They never expect the trap until it closes." The tiny red light blinked steadily, recording. Caleb made one final adjustment to the strap and stepped back. "Tonight," he said quietly, "we make the truth undeniable." The evening sun cast long shadows through Rose Diner's windows as people filled every booth, counter seat, and corner. The bell above the door chimed constantly, a steady stream of faces that hadn't been seen in weeks, months, some even years. Deacon Lewis Price stood near the entrance, greeting each arrival with dignity and purpose. "Welcome back, Miss Martha," he said warmly, to an elderly woman who hadn't visited since her complaint about Deputy Laird disappeared last summer. "Your usual booth is waiting." Tyler Finch moved between tables with practiced efficiency, his phone secure in his apron pocket, ready to record. His hands trembled slightly as he poured coffee, but his eyes were alert, watching everything. Sadie Klein set up her laptop at a corner table, fingers flying across the keyboard as she prepared her personal live stream account. Her editor's threats meant nothing now. The truth would find its way out, even if she had to sacrifice her career to make it happen. "Testing, testing," she whispered into her microphone. "Live from Rose Diner in downtown." The regulars came too, mechanics from Johnson's garage, teachers from the elementary school, Even Pastor Wallace, who usually avoided conflict. They filled their usual spots, but tonight there was something different in their posture. They sat straighter, watched more carefully, held their phones casually, but ready. Imani moved through it all with careful grace, her movements measured and professional. The body cam hidden in her apron strap captured everything as she worked. Mavis Rowe stayed close, helping with orders, her earlier fear transformed into quiet determination. "Coffee's fresh," Imani announced, filling cups with steady hands. "Apple pie just came out of the oven." The door chimed again at 7:43 p.m. Officer Rylan Voss entered first, followed by Deputies Laird and Cooper. The diner's conversation didn't stop, but it shifted. Dozens of eyes tracking their movements while pretending not to watch. Voss noticed immediately. His jaw tightened as he surveyed the unusually full diner. This wasn't his normal audience of cowed witnesses and averted gazes. These people were watching back. "Awful crowded tonight," he said loudly, not taking his assigned seat. Instead, he prowled between tables, looking for weakness. Almost like someone planned it. Caleb sat at the counter, positioned to see every angle. He sipped his coffee without turning, letting Voss's reflection in the metallic napkin holder tell him everything he needed to know. Imani approached Voss's group with professional courtesy. "Good evening, officers. Can I get you started with some coffee?" Voss snatched a receipt from her order pad. "What's this? Overcharging folks now? Creating trouble?" "Standard prices, sir," Imani replied evenly, her voice carrying in the suddenly quiet diner. "Same as always." "Outside," Voss snapped. "Now, we need to discuss your attitude." "I'm happy to discuss any concerns right here," Imani said. Phones appeared on tables, their camera lenses small and silent. Sadie's live stream counter ticked upward. 50 viewers, 75, 100. Local faces began appearing in the comment section, sharing the feed. Voss's face darkened. He grabbed Imani's wrist, fingers digging in. "I said outside." "Officer." Deacon's voice cut through the tension, steady and clear. "Do not touch her. Remove your hand." More phones rose, a forest of witnesses. Deputy Cooper shifted uncomfortably, but Voss was too far gone in his rage to notice. The trap he'd walked into was closing, but his ego wouldn't let him see it. "This is police business," Voss snarled, yanking Imani toward the door. "Anyone interferes, they're obstructing justice." The live stream counter jumped, 250, 300, 400 people watching now. Comments flooded in. "Is this happening again?" "Not in our town." "Someone stop him." Mavis Rowe stepped forward, her voice shaking but determined. "Officer Voss, this is my establishment. I'm asking you to release my employee." "You're taking her side?" Voss tightened his grip. "After everything we've done for this place?" The threat hung in the air, but this time it was caught on dozens of cameras. Tyler's phone captured Voss's twisted expression. Sadie's live stream showed his white-knuckled grip on Imani's wrist. The body cam recorded his ragged breathing, his loss of control. "Last warning," Deacon announced clearly, making sure every phone caught his words. "Release her now." Voss looked around, finally seeing what he'd walked into. Witnesses everywhere. Cameras recording. His usual power play backfiring in real time. But instead of backing down, his face contorted with rage. The live stream counter hit 500 as Voss yanked Imani roughly toward the door. His authority was being challenged in public, and he could only think of one response: escalation. Caleb remained still at the counter, every muscle coiled but controlled. He'd helped set the stage, and now Voss was playing his part perfectly, proving exactly who he was in front of hundreds of witnesses. The diner collectively held its breath as Voss dragged Imani another step toward the door. Phones tracked their movement, documentation spreading faster than any cover-up could contain. This wasn't going to be another lost complaint, another disappeared report, another silenced victim. This was happening in front of the whole town, and beyond. The glass door swung wide as Voss dragged Imani toward the dark parking lot. The evening air hit her face, carrying the scent of diesel and threat. Phones followed their movement, dozens of screens glowing like fireflies in the diner windows. Caleb unfolded from his counter seat with fluid grace, each step measured and purposeful. He positioned himself between Voss and the exit, hands relaxed at his sides, voice steady. "Release my wife," he said quietly. "You're hurting her." "Back off," Voss snarled, twisting Imani's wrist harder. "Or I'll add assaulting an officer to your drug charges." Inside the diner, Sadie Klein's live stream captured every word. The viewer count ticked past 600 as local channels began picking up the feed. Comments flooded the screen. "That's the seal they tried to frame." "Someone help her!" "Keep recording." Voss's face contorted with rage. "I said back off." He shoved Imani aside and swung at Caleb, a wild haymaker meant to provoke resistance. But Caleb moved like water. He slipped the punch and caught Voss's extended arm in a fluid trap, redirecting the officer's momentum. There was no violence in it, just precise control born from thousands of training hours. "Stop resisting!" Voss screamed, trying to create his usual narrative. But the cameras caught everything: his initial swing, Caleb's defensive redirect, the complete absence of strikes. Deputies Laird and Cooper rushed forward, hands on holsters. "Everyone stay back," Cooper shouted. "Keep filming." Deacon's voice rang out clear and strong. "Every angle, every badge number." Tyler's fingers flew across his phone, initiating the upload sequence Caleb had helped him prepare. The footage scattered to dozens of secure accounts, far beyond the department's reach. "He's attacking an officer!" Voss wheezed as Caleb smoothly pinned him against the diner's brick wall. The position was secure, but careful. No pressure points, no pain compliance, just efficient immobilization. "I am defending my wife," Caleb stated clearly, making sure every camera caught his words. "I have not struck you. I am using minimum force to prevent further assault." Nora Haskins stepped through the diner door, her whole body trembling. But her voice carried strength as she faced the deputies she once dispatched for. "This is their pattern," she announced. "I dispatched their calls for 3 years, planted evidence, buried complaints, intimidation orders from Sheriff Brinley himself. I have dates, times, case numbers." Sadie steadied her camera on Nora's face, then panned to capture the deputies' reactions. The live stream comments exploded. "Former dispatcher confirms. Save this video. We see you, Nora." Red and blue lights splashed across the scene as local patrol cars screamed into the parking lot. But behind them came unfamiliar vehicles, unmarked sedans with government plates. "State investigators," Deacon called out. "Everyone stay calm and keep recording." Jonah Mercer emerged from one of the sedans, flanked by federal agents. His badge caught the evening light as he approached. More cars arrived. Different agencies, different jurisdictions, all converging on this small-town diner. Voss's face shifted from rage to uncertainty as he recognized the federal presence. "This is a local matter," he shouted. "These people are interfering with—" "Officer Voss," a state investigator cut through the chaos, her voice carrying authority that silenced even the crowd. "Turn around." The small parking lot fell quiet except for the sound of idling engines and clicking camera shutters. Voss's arrogant grin finally died as realization dawned. This wasn't just about a slap in a diner anymore. This was everything coming to light. Caleb maintained his controlled hold, waiting for official instructions. Imani stood tall despite her reddened wrist, surrounded by Deacon, Tyler, and other community members who refused to look away this time. "I said turn around, Officer Voss," the investigator repeated, approaching with handcuffs visible. Sadie's livestream counter passed 1,000 viewers as the scene unfolded. Local news vans began arriving, their satellite dishes rising against the darkening sky. Deputies Laird and Cooper stepped back, finally reading the situation. Inside the diner, Mavis Rowe pressed her hands against the window, watching years of enforced silence crack like thin ice. The customers who had witnessed so much, stayed quiet so long, now stood witness with their phones raised, documenting, sharing, refusing to let this disappear. "This is an illegal arrest," Voss tried one last time, his voice losing its power. "I have rights." "Yes, you do," the investigator agreed calmly. "And we'll discuss them all downtown. Now, turn around, or my federal colleagues will assist you." More emergency lights painted the scene as additional authorities arrived. The small-town power structure that had protected Voss for so long was crumbling under the weight of undeniable evidence and multiple jurisdictions. The red and blue emergency lights painted wild patterns across Rose Diner's windows as Officer Rylan Voss shuffled through the parking lot in handcuffs. His head hung low, his swagger replaced by stunned disbelief. The crowd that had gathered, customers, neighbors, witnesses who'd stayed silent for years, watched in complete silence as justice materialized before their eyes. "Keep walking," the state investigator directed, guiding Voss past the very spot where he'd slapped Imani just days ago. The metal cuffs caught the flashing lights, a perfect counterpoint to his tarnished badge. Sadie Klein's live stream captured every step, her steady hands ensuring the moment would be preserved forever. The viewer count had exploded past 5,000. Local news crews jostled for position, their cameras drinking in the scene of a small town's power structure crumbling in real time. A black SUV screeched into the parking lot, and Sheriff Hal Brinley burst out, face red with fury. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded, storming toward the investigators. "This is my jurisdiction. You have no right to." "Actually, Sheriff," Jonah Mercer stepped forward, federal badge gleaming, "we have every right. And you might want to stay right there." Two agents moved to flank Brinley as Nora Haskins emerged from the diner. She clutched a thick folder to her chest, her hands trembling, but her voice clear. "I have the dispatch logs, Sheriff. Every complaint you ordered us to lose, every witness statement that disappeared. 3 years of dates, times, and case numbers." Brinley's face drained of color. "You're lying. Those records were destroyed." "Destroyed?" Jonah raised an eyebrow. "That's an interesting choice of words, Sheriff." Inside the diner, Mavis Rowe watched through the window, wringing her hands in her apron. Making a decision, she pushed through the door and approached the investigators. "I need to make a statement," she announced, voice shaking but determined. "About the security footage from Sunday. About the phone calls I received ordering me to let it corrupt. I have names, times, everything." Caleb stepped forward, holding up a sealed envelope. "This contains photographs of patrol patterns, documentation of intimidation attempts, and witness statements I've been collecting. All authenticated and time-stamped, with copies stored securely off-site." The federal agents exchanged knowing looks. "Sheriff Brinley," Jonah said, "this evidence isn't just about Officer Voss's assault on Mrs. Graves. We've been building a file on your department's quiet punishments for months. Tonight just pushed the timeline forward." Brinley's hand twitched toward his hip, but the agents were faster. "Don't," one warned quietly. "You've got enough problems." Sadie moved closer with her phone, ensuring every word was captured. Comments flooded her live stream. "Finally! Get them all! Our town deserves better." Tyler Finch stood with his mother near the diner entrance, recording everything on his own phone. The same officers who'd tried to intimidate him now couldn't meet his eyes. Deacon Lewis Price placed a steady hand on the boy's shoulder, pride evident in his expression. "Sheriff Hal Brinley," the state investigator announced formally, "please surrender your weapon and badge. You're being placed on immediate administrative suspension pending a full investigation." The crowd watched as Brinley's carefully constructed authority crumbled. Deputies who'd backed him for years now stepped away, trying to distance themselves from his fall. The photographers captured every moment of his surrender, every flash of their cameras, another nail in the coffin of his power. Inside the diner, Imani and Caleb sat in a quiet booth while investigators took statements. Her hand hadn't stopped shaking, but now it was from relief rather than fear. Nora Haskins joined them, spreading her logs across the table, a paper trail of justice too long denied. The next morning, Jonah visited them at home with updates. Voss is facing multiple charges, he reported. Assault, civil rights violations, abuse of authority. We're investigating every complaint in Nora's logs. 3 deputies are already suspended for witness intimidation. And Brinley, he smiled grimly. The arrest warrant is being prepared. His quiet punishments weren't so quiet after all. That afternoon, Imani met with Patricia Chen, a civil rights attorney recommended by Jonah. The evidence spread across the conference table told an overwhelming story. Photographs, videos, witness statements, dispatch logs, and community testimonies. This is one of the strongest cases I've seen, Patricia said, reviewing the files. The combination of direct evidence and pattern documentation is extraordinary. They can't bury this or explain it away. Imani's voice was steady as she signed the paperwork to file suit. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about everyone who was ever afraid to speak up. By Friday evening, the news had spread throughout the region. When Imani walked into Rose's diner for her first shift back, the packed dining room erupted in applause. Regular customers who'd looked away on Sunday now stood to greet her. Tyler grinned from behind the counter, wearing a new name tag that read, Assistant Manager. Mavis hurried over, eyes wet. Your section's full, she said, handling Imani a fresh apron. They all asked specifically for you. Caleb sat at the counter, watching his wife move through the diner with her head high. No more intimidation, no more silent acceptance of abuse. The community that had finally found its voice filled every booth and table. Their presence, a declaration. Never again. Imani paused at a table where Deacon Lewis Price sat with some of the elders who'd helped gather evidence. She didn't need to ask for their order. She knew their preferences by heart. But now they looked up at her, with clear eyes and warm smiles. No fear shadowing their faces. Good to see you, Mrs. Graves, one elder said, and the simple greeting carried the weight of justice finally made visible. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.